Alright, what is good, ladies and gentlemen, is the Mass Reviewer back again with another review, and tonight we are doing a review for Planes, Fire, and Rescue. This is the sequel to the original Planes film, which came out, which is a spin-off of the Cars franchise, and I do think I actually did see this film in theaters, which I did a bit of research. Like the Planes movies, they're from a studio called Disney Toons, which a lot of their films are basically just straight to DVD videos. So I am actually surprised that, like, I know I saw this film when I was younger, but I'm surprised that I would have seen it in theaters. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. So this is technically a rewatch, but it's more of like a, I don't know. It's like a pseudo rewatch once again of like I basically remember nothing that happened in the film. So basically I don't know. I call these pseudo rewatches. I watched it. I don't remember anything about it the first time around. So pseudo rewatch. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, let us just get into it. Starting off with the plot. So the plot of this film is, I will say this, I actually do think that it is a decent sequel in the sense that it does like bring back characters from the first film, and sometimes like films they just kind of abandoned. I thought this film especially would be a film that just like they kind of ignore a lot of the events of the previous film, but it turns out they actually did bring back Skipper, who none of these characters really serve a purpose in this film, to be honest. It's just kind of like a callback of like, hey, these characters were in the previous film, and so they're in this film once again. So I do appreciate that, where Skipper's in this, Chug is in this once again, Dottie, I guess, is in this, where she does end up giving the news to Dusty that his gearbox is damaged, so I guess she serves a role in that sense. She serves a role, I guess. So yeah, but basically the plot of the film is that Dusty, he is like basically coming off of the last film. He's like a big racer and stuff, very famous, but he does end up damaging his gearbox, which basically means that he cannot go over a certain speed, which basically means he has to give up racing. He cannot get the gearbox replaced because it was made in a factory and the product was discontinued, and so at this point he is kind of dealing with the fact that he might have to give up racing. So he goes out for a night flight, and he ends up hitting he starts a fire, like he ends up like crashing it somewhere, and it starts a fire basically, and in order to stop the fire they have to hit him along with like some other the characters from the last film, as well as a new character. I think his name was, I forgot, Mayday. Yeah, that was the name, Mayday. They tip over a water tower in order to stop the fire, and then from that happening, the town gets like some cars come over. Basically, they're in charge of, I don't remember, TSM something, and they basically say that they're not following the guidelines or something like that, basically, and so they have to close they say we're closing down the runway or something like that, which is going to be a problem for the town because they have this corn festival coming up, and it will mean that no one will be able to get to the town or leave the town or whatever. So yeah, I'm not sure about the exact logistics, but anyway, that is the plot. And so Dusty, apparently the way that they can save the town's runway, or I think it was runway, was basically that if they need a second firefighter because they only have one, and so Dusty volunteers. He basically says that he will go to get certified as being a firefighter. So the rest of the film is basically just Dusty. He learns how to be a firefighter. He's working with a bunch of other planes and cars and stuff. They're fighting fires, and yeah, there's this lodge that is opened by this guy, Cad something, I forgot his last name, but he's the antagonist of the film, kind of, where he's running a lodge, and he is diverting all the funds from the fire department to his hotel, basically. And so yeah, it gets to a point, there's a big storm happens, fire starts going. I'm kind of skipping ahead to basically the end of the film. Like most of the film, it's just like, I don't know, the Dusty training and some interactions with other characters, and Anyway, so we get to the end of the film. A giant fire starts. Dusty is distracted by the fact he gets news that he got his hopes up because he found out from his friends that there might be a replacement gearbox that he could get, but then later on they end up like giving him the news that it was a misprint and that they don't actually have the part that he needs, and so he's distracted. He goes to put out a fire, but then he messes up, and so the main person that he interacts with is Blade. He is the head of he's like the head of the fire department, basically, and so Blade saves Dusty from, like, they're in the middle of the forest fire. They go hide in a mine. Blade is like protecting Dusty from getting burnt and stuff, and so yeah. Now we're in basically the climax of the film. Fire raging everywhere. The hotel had to be completely abandoned and stuff. The antagonist, he's like diverting the water that the firefighters need to fight the fires in order to protect activate the sprinklers for his hotel, so that way his hotel will be fine. And yeah, so once just at this point, Blade is damaged. Dusty, he is just him and the rest of the fire department. They're trying to put out the fire, and eventually they manage to help the goal is not to put out the fire. I think it's just to help like the cars and like just basically help the cars and planes leave and get to safety. So yeah, they managed to do so, but there is this one couple that was like early in the film, towards the middle. It's like Dusty and some of the other fire department. They met this couple and they wanted to go to this specific location in the area where they went on their honeymoon, and so they end up. So Dusty has to save them, and at this point, in order to save them, he has to perform a maneuver which would cause his gearbox to get damaged further, but he just goes through with it anyway, and so he manages to save them, but in the process, he does his gearbox was further damaged, and so he ends up crashing. And yeah, but this leads into the final part of the film where he was rescued by the fire department, and he gets fixed up by, I think his name was Maru. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was his name. So Maru, the technician of the fire department, basically, he managed to actually from scratch build the completely, like the part that Dusty needed in order to fix his, in order to be better. So that's good, and so now Dusty, he has his gearbox, so he goes back to being a racer, but he's also now like a part-time fireman, I guess, and so that is basically where the movie ends. And yes, I did much more of a recap for this film compared to the last one, where the last one it was much more of a generic plot. But I will be honest, in terms of plot-wise, I do think even if the last film it was generic and it didn't really do anything creative, the actual core plot itself of the race was still somewhat entertaining, but engaging, I guess. I did end up giving the plot like a 2 out of 5. I didn't really like it because it wasn't very creative, but even so, it like still had the baseline of like, oh, it's a story we've seen before. It's like, but even so, it's like that story is not terrible, I would say. I think Goat did it much better, where it's a story we've seen before, but it was more creative with it, and so it ended up, the plot ended up being higher. In that case, I gave it a 2 out of 5 because it was not creative. This film, the plot is basically just like Dusty is learning to be a firefighter, and then they fight some fires. Honestly, I don't really. I'm thinking, I don't know. I never give a 1 out of 5 because I think 1 out of 5. I think I might change the definition. Like I always say, like 1 out of 5 for the plot. I call it like I hate it, but I think I might just start saying like 1 out of 5 means I just like 2 out of 5 is I didn't like it. 1 out of 5 is like I really did not really like. I found it really just not interesting. So yeah, I'm gonna be harsh with this. I'm going to give the plot a 1 out of 5. I didn't hate it. I don't think there's ever gonna be like a plot that I like really hate or despise, but in this case, the plot, it was pretty boring. It was just like, here, I appreciate what they're trying to do, because this film is very clearly like trying to be a tribute to firefighters. At the very beginning of the film, there's like a message saying like this film goes out to all the firefighters. So I appreciate what they're doing, where they are trying to, like firefighters, they do put their lives in danger to save others. And so I think that it's like a good thing that they're doing, like trying to make a movie to like celebrate the work of firefighters. I think that aspect is good. But the actual plot itself of just like fighting fires, it is just, even if like I can appreciate the tribute to firefighters around the world, I still just don't really think that the plot is that interesting. So yeah, just a 1 out of 5 for the plot. In terms of the characters, none of the characters I really cared for too much. There's actually a decent amount, like a lot of new characters in the fire department. So many that like I'll get to probably the next film will be the movie ranking for the Cars/Planes movies, and then I will get to the character ranking for both franchises, and then we will get more into the specifics. But yeah, there's a decent amount of like new characters. Maru, I thought Maru was good. Dipper, this like plane that she likes, Dusty, didn't really care for her. Blade feels very kind of bland, honestly. Just this plane that he used to be a reality TV star, but then his partner got into an accident, and then from there he switched careers to being a firefighter in order to save lives. He feels like very, I don't know, he never shows any real emotion or anything. So I think Skipper, like in the last film, I think he did. At least he had like a tragic backstory, which we saw the war scene in the last film of like his squad like getting wiped out and stuff. So that like helped his character. Where in this film we don't have like any flashback scene of Blade where it's like he's of the accident that happened with his partner and stuff. So I thought that could have maybe improved his character. But anyway, besides him, Cat, I thought Cat was a bit entertaining as the antagonist. I would say that he was pretty good. I would say. The rest of the characters, they bring back some characters from the last movie. They're not really important to the plot. Dusty himself doesn't feel as interesting as the last film, where, I don't know, the last film, it's like, it was better motivation if he wanted to prove himself as being he's a crop duster, but he wants to prove that, like, he could be a racer. It's like no one believes in him. It's definitely the underdog story, like the classic underdog story in the last film. Whereas this film, it's just like, I guess I do like the aspect of him like realizing that they didn't do this with Cars. Like in Cars in the third film, it was Lightning McQueen. He had to retire, but it wasn't because like he physically couldn't race. It was because he just like was being outclassed by the newer generation and stuff. So I think that this film is basically Dusty. He's kind of being forced to retire because of the fact that he is damaged and he physically cannot keep up. Like he cannot race. So I think that that aspect of him was good, I guess. But even so, I think I liked him a bit more in the first film, I would say. So yeah, in terms of the characters, I'll go a 5 out of 10. I think I gave that for the first film as well. There's some good characters, there's some that are not as good. I'm just going to give it a 5 out of 10. They're fine, like not good or bad, I would say. So in terms of the settings, this film definitely doesn't have as much variety in terms of its settings compared to the last film where we did see like a bunch of different locations around the world, which I did. I think I gave it like a 5.5. I thought it was decent settings in the last film. This film, it's pretty one note. It's basically just forest areas, and there are like the fire scenes. I guess they do help to paint a very extreme, dangerous situation like towards the end of the film. Even so, it doesn't really like it's very smoky and stuff, and you can't really see even the forest itself. It just feels a bit generic, and so I don't really care for the settings too much. I'm just gonna give like a 5 out of 10. I would say not really. Yeah, not. It's fine. It's not good. It's not bad. I would say. In terms of the visuals, I did not really like the flying as much. Like in the last film, the racing stuff. Like it was like cool to see the planes. Like when the qualifying matches that Dusty had to go through in order to actually qualify for the race, and then the race itself, where it's like you have these planes that are moving pretty fast. They'll do these like cool maneuvers of like the knife. I still don't remember what it's called, but the knife edge like maneuver, whatever it was called. So that stuff was cool. This film, there wasn't really any. There's just a lot of fires and stuff, and them like putting out fires, but it doesn't like look too visually appealing. Again, the art style, it's not really one of my favorite art styles. In terms of the visuals, I really just have nothing to really praise the visual aspects of this film on. So I'm going to give get the score sheet out for this. I'm going to give the visuals. I'm going to say, I don't know. It still looks. It's fine. Like it doesn't look terrible to look at, but I just really there's nothing too interesting about it. So I'm just going to go with a. I don't know. We'll just go a 5 out of 10. Like there's nothing really wrong with it, but there's nothing interesting about it. So we're just going to go another 5 out of 10. I would say. In terms of the worst thing, I'm just going to reuse the worst score, which was the plot, which I gave a 1 out of 5. So I'm just going to give another 1 out of 5 because the plot it just was not very interesting. I got to say so. In terms of the best thing, I did think that probably the best thing was I did like the training montage that Dusty went through with Blade. I thought that that did feel it's like they had a montage in the last film as well with Dusty training with Skipper, and so they did another montage kind of with Dusty training with Blade. And I guess those are just kind of, I know they feel like entertaining to watch, I guess. So in the last film it was kind of like Blade. I think Dusty couldn't like fly very high, I think, and in this film it was Dusty like he can't go too fast, otherwise his gearbox is going to break further. And so I would say that the best thing was probably just the montage. I would give it wasn't even like amazing or anything. I would just give it like I'm thinking 5.5 to a, I'm just going to call it a 5.5. I would say it was decent. It wasn't great, but the favorite part of the film, I guess it was decent, I would say. And yeah, that is, I didn't really write any extra notes, so I'm just going to do the calculations. So King Crimson. All right, so it ends up coming out to about a 4 out of 10, which would be bad, and I think I would probably give it a bit higher than that. I think I would probably just give it a 4.5. I'm going to say it wasn't really good. I would say it was not good, but it's not too long. It's definitely short. It's like only an hour and like 15 minutes, so it's not too long. I appreciate the tribute, I guess, for firefighters and stuff, and yeah, overall, I didn't really like it. I didn't think it was good, but I can appreciate like what they were trying to do with this. So yeah, I'm just going to give it a 4.5. I'm going to say that it was not good, and that's what I thought about it. So yeah, that is pretty much all there is to it. So if you have any recommendations, any shows, movies, video game stories, anime, manga, web series, anything that you want me to review, leave it in the comments, and I'll maybe possibly check it out. With that said, that is pretty much all there is to it, so let's leave it at that.